The Roman Empire is getting bigger, and we need to count all of our citizens. I, Emperor Caesar Augustus, therefore decree that a census should be taken, and each person should return to their ancestral town to register with no exceptions. A challenging task for anybody, let alone someone who is heavily pregnant. It was some 9 months earlier that the angel Gabriel had visited a Nazarene home of a young woman named Mary. Not much was known of this young woman, apart from the fact that she was engaged to be married to a young man named Joseph, a carpenter by trade, whose family tree included King David. Mary and Joseph had committed to marriage and were looking forward to a life together. But everything has its right time and place, and being intimate was reserved for when they got married. So when the angel Gabriel told Mary to sit down and listen, the last thing she was anticipating to hear was that she was going to be pregnant. You have found favour with God, the angel said. You will conceive and give birth to a son. Don't worry about picking out the name, the angel went on and said. We've got that covered as well. We will name him Jesus. I know it's a popular name, but let me tell you that this is no ordinary son. Jesus will be someone very special. In fact, he will reign over Israel forever, and his kingdom will never end. And by the way, Mary, do not be afraid. Welcome to Christmas at C3, and welcome back to my good friends Alicia and Kyle. Great to have you guys here.
Great to be back.
Good to be here.
Now, come on, it was, we last sat around the table on Good Friday. Conditions were a little bit different, and when it was the middle of COVID and there was like 3 of us there and a couple of our production guys.
Yeah.
It's now Christmas.
Yeah.
And we get to be together again. We get kind of like getting the band back together, right? That's a good thing, isn't it? And so what we felt though is that when I chatted with you guys, we felt that it would be good to, you know, we sort of shared about Good Friday and about Easter, and we thought it'd be great to have a bit of a in-depth around what Christmas would be as well. Yeah. So we're going to get straight into it, and I have to start with you, Alicia, because Kyle and I can't really claim to have any knowledge of pregnancy at all. But at 8 3/4 months, Joseph, who's still a little bit on edge, says to Mary, hey, jump on the pet donkey. We're heading off to Bethlehem. It's a 90-mile trip, and it's going to take about 10 days. What's the first thing you say?
Joseph is lucky to be alive. No.
Okay, probably fair call. Fair call. Yeah.
Look, honestly, that I mean, if you really think about that in practice, that's huge. And you really have limited capacity. When you're at that point, you have limited capacity to cope for it. So I look at Mary and I just think, what a woman. Like, to cope with all of that was really quite extraordinary.
And now, there's also custom back then where she would have prepared the food and everything. It's not like on the way they could stop at the local roadhouse or anything. I mean, this was 90 miles through difficult terrain. It is actually the middle of winter there, which we know there's probably mid-30s during the day, but got really cold and rainy at night. So she's got to pack water, she's got to pack food. How are you doing all this stuff at 8 3/4 months pregnant?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And I think we don't really understand how it is to sort of live through something like that. But I guess, you know, for Mary, she knew at that stage that there was a purpose to this pregnancy. There was a reason for her child. She knew she was carrying the Son of God. You know, like, I'm sure that something got her through that journey, because otherwise, practically, I mean, we're pretty soft in this day and age. To do that as a young girl shows incredible strength.
All right, I'm going to put this one on you then, Kyle. I'm going to go back a little bit here. I want you to go back in the first little analogue that I talked about here. You know, there was that conversation that would have had to have been had. And I'm not sure whether Mary sort of sat, you know, Joseph down and said, I'm going to get you a cup of coffee. I've got something to tell you. But Mary and Joseph, they were engaged to be married, and yet the scriptures are very clear that they hadn't been intimate together. She was a virgin, and yet she's about to tell him that I'm pregnant. You're on the other side of this. How do you respond to something like this?
Well, there's just so many different things coming into play with that conversation. Because the first is straight away, okay, clearly you're lying, which means you've been with someone else, you've been intimate with someone else, and now you're carrying their baby. So back in that time, that was a stonable offence. So she'd literally broken the law. She could die for this. So as Joseph, am I going to defend her? Do I have to step in? Do I even want to? So you're struggling with that betrayal, the fact, oh man, you know, she's been with someone else. She's engaged to me. Now she's pregnant. She's going to die, and I'm going to look like an idiot. But it says obviously that he cared for her. He had some compassion for her. The flip side of that is that then she turns around and says, by the way, I'm carrying the Messiah, which the Messiah was promised to be a king like David, that this new Messiah would come. He's going to be David, but he's going to rule a forever kingdom. They're under Roman rule, so they're expecting the king to come from some massive high-standing family, some strong family, maybe even like, you know, much higher social status than some tiny teenage girl from backwaters, Galilee.
Yeah.
So, you know, as Joseph, I'm thinking, if you're going to come up with a lie, come up with a better one than that.
Yeah.
Because
It's so true. I mean, Nazareth was seen as a godless town.
Yeah.
You know, it was in the region of Galilee and really was a godless type town. I mean, and you know, here she is, a young girl. We can speculate her age, but in then we're probably talking a mid-teens type girl with this, who probably didn't have much of a future in a godless type town, and she's having these difficult conversations. I'm kind of thankful that we read in the scriptures in Matthew where an angel also came to Joseph as well. And, you know, the angel basically, because we read that Joseph said he was a man of respect and he wanted to just very quietly, you know, cut off the engagement. We're done. We'll just go our separate ways and I'll go and do my thing. And, you know, it just didn't work out. But the angel says also to Joseph, trust me.
Yeah.
Can you trust in a time like that? I mean, you know, this is a big thing. I'm not sure that Joseph had ever to have an angel visit him before. And the first time he does, he says, trust me, the woman that you're going to be betrothed to is pregnant, but you've got to trust me.
Yeah.
That's a big word.
Well, I reckon on that, because I was thinking that the only reason that Joseph, you know, wouldn't cast her out to the wolves is because he would think, she's just gone crazy. Like, she's just lost her mind. That can be the only solution going through his mind. So for an angel then to show up and say, hey, here I am, he's probably thinking the same thing. He's thinking, oh no, we've both got the same, you know, psychosis happening right here. Because it makes no sense. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah. It's interesting though, like God does that. He does do really unusual, strange things in our lives. And I think we question, is that God?
Yeah.
You know, like, is that him? And sometimes you get a word. And it might not be a visitation from an angel, but it might be something that you read that you just know in the core of your being that was from God. And so can you trust? I actually think trust is one of the greatest givers of courage and ability. It carries us all the way through something that we can't understand in the middle. And sometimes that's all you've got is trust. And whether it's in the middle of, you know, a feeling like I think I've actually lost my mind here, because life throws things like that at you.
Sure.
But trust is the one thing that gives us the longevity.
Yeah, sure.
It's the basis for
Good
it.
word.
Yeah, I think when I said to Morella that, you know, we're going to pastor a church, I think she thought I'd lost my mind.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, no, I've had this sort of, you know, God's spoken to me. And I'm pretty sure she said, it's okay, dear.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay. We'll get over this.
We'll get in the ambulance. We'll take you to the psych ward. It's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. We're all good. Hey, Kyle, you touched on this, and either one of you can answer this, but you touched on the understanding that this was no ordinary baby.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, you know, sort of, you know, as I said, from a woman coming home and saying, hey, honey, I'm pregnant, you know, this is awesome, we're going to, you know, and then you have your scan and we're going to have a little boy or a little girl or whatever this might be. You know, they were both told in prophetic from an angel that they're going to be having the saviour of the world. What a responsibility that is to carry. I mean, is it something that, how do we carry such a responsibility like that?
Well, I think particularly because at that time, they were relying on Messiah to come and save everything. To save, you know, their culture, their family, you know, their status in the global stage, you know, for the Jews. So not only are they carrying the hope of the world, but they're carrying the hope of their friends, you know, their family, of their own livelihood in the future. So that's not something we can take lightly. That's like if someone came here and said, hey, you know, you're going to have a son who's going to rule the Western world. He's going to make sure you're safe and your livelihood is satisfied forever. Like, who can carry that? It would drive you crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, it is huge. And I think carrying any child and the expectations and love you have for any child can be a huge burden. So for them to think, well, I'm now carrying, you know, the Saviour of the world, I'm carrying the Son of God, is a huge, huge thing. And I think sometimes expectations are just too heavy for us. But the interesting thing is God never asks us to carry anything that we're actually not equipped to carry.
It's so good.
So for some reason, he chose Mary and Joseph. Now, we don't know them that well, but obviously he knew that Mary had this incredible tenacity or inner strength, and Joseph had this compassion and mercy. They had enough to be able to walk that journey out. And so even though the expectations are huge, I think they had what it took. And so if they only had trust to walk out a day at a time, for some reason I feel like that God chose them because he knew they could do it.
That's good. I like that day at a time, you know, just
It
one
is.
step in front of the other.
It is. And what else would you have had?
Yeah.
You would have just had a day at a time. I mean, they're on a donkey. You know, they're not really living like in a palace with the new king of the world.
Yeah.
You've got a day at a time.
Yeah. No, it's so good. So, all right, let's get closer to, you know, they've done the 10 days, they've got to Bethlehem, and, you know, it's kind of like, I can imagine sort of Joseph saying to Mary, you know, at this stage, I don't know about, for me, it was, you know, like you're kind of like, oh, the birth's coming, you know, the baby's coming. You're madly going around. Have we got the bag packed? Have we got all this sort of stuff? Are we booked in at the hospital? Have we done all of our, you know, sort of courses, all this sort of stuff? And they get there, and it's obviously just mayhem in Bethlehem. It is absolute mayhem. This is the first census they've had in a long time. You know, there's crazy going down. They've got there, and let's talk about the birth with this, because we can talk about a nativity scene, and the commercial nativity scene sits in every shop window, and it's of this beautiful manger with nice looking fluffy sheep hanging around and all of this sort of stuff there. Yet in reality, it was probably in a cave.
That's right.
Mary probably gave birth in a cave, surrounded by camels and cows and pheasants and peacocks and all sorts of stuff like this. It wasn't just nice sheep and goats that they were hanging around. Mark says to you, your husband says to you, Alicia, hey, sweetie, I forgot to book the private hospital, and sorry, but we're just using the car park out in the back. Do you mind?
I know, and if Mark's watching this chat, he will laugh, because I have a habit of being slightly dramatic. And so when things don't go my way, it's not good. And having a baby in a cave...
You're 9 months pregnant at this stage too.
It would not be good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's the perfect letdown, isn't it? And I think, you know, partway through this journey, you say, okay, let's take that expectations thing again. So I've come to terms with the fact that I'm having the Son of God, that this is going to be really special. So now potentially we've built our expectations back up, that somehow this is going to be some kind of hallelujah chorus and some beautiful moment.
Yeah,
and she finds herself in a cave. She must have been thinking, really?
Yeah.
Like, didn't you give me a promise? And now I'm in a cave? You know, I think we do that.
That's so true, yeah.
Don't we?
For
Like,
sure.
we once we come to terms with the word from God, we build up expectations about what it's going to look like, and all of a sudden, it's not that. Again.
So let's talk on these expectations, because we're coming up to Christmas. You know, we're at Christmas time now. And if we go back to the start of 2020, we had great expectations for 2020.
Yeah, we did.
You know, it was 12 months ago that we were sort of like, I'm sure we're all sitting around at Christmas at, 2019 with family and friends going, this next year is going to be so good, we can't wait for this. Yet, as we've gone through the year, we know that, our expectations haven't been what we thought they would be. How do we, as Christians, deal with that? How do we deal with unmet expectations? I'm looking at you on this one, Kyle.
Well, I mean, if we piggyback off that scene right there, we've got Mary, she's just had the baby. And then, we've got another crowd of people, the shepherds, who have heard about the the declaration of the king from angels. So there's a chorus of angels saying the king has been born. All right, and they rush in there into where all the smelly animals are. You've got these smelly shepherds. So you can imagine Mary, if she hears, oh, the angels have spoken to a whole crowd of people and said the king's been born. She's not going to be thinking smelly shepherds. She's going to be thinking, oh, finally, those innkeepers who kicked me out now know what I'm carrying is worthwhile. So, you know, now, oh, the king's come because the angels have spoken to them. Nah, you know, the angels have gone out and they've spoken to the poor. And I think for Christians now, and especially facing a time in the church, we might expect that, oh, wow, okay, the world's going to stand up and see that they need the church right now. We're thinking, oh, the world rulers see that they need us. Whereas it's the complete opposite. It's the poor and the needy that need us more than ever before.
That's so good.
And so we carry something that they need, that we need them. You know, we need them as much as they need us. And that's the whole point that Jesus was born to some backwater country girl, is because we carry something that they need, not that the rulers need.
Yeah, that's so good.
That's amazing.
So Alicia, you know, is that, you know, we talked about that unmet expectation. Do we hit Christmas now at 2020 and we've dulled our expectations, or should we be going, no, we've got a God of hope? I mean, how do we reconcile that with ourselves, let alone share that with others?
Yeah, it's a great tension. It's a great tension between believing God for amazing things and being humble enough to accept what today brings.
So good.
And I think 2020 has brought us all back to the basics and to a core that is really, really powerful. Because if you can live in the moment and trust God for the moment, you can also trust Him for the big things.
Yeah, so good.
But it's sometimes we just do either or. We're either I'm all for the big things and all my expectations are being mucked up, and then I'm devastated and I have to lie on the couch to get over it. Or I don't believe Him for anything and I'm just, you know, living today. But it's actually not. It's both and. It's about being able to live. And I think Mary and Joseph, this story is an incredible, you know, it's an incredible picture of that. Is the tension between knowing something in God that's for the future and just walking out my day to day, which might find myself in a cave. And I reckon the miracle actually happens there. To be honest, I think the miracle happens there. It's where you find God, is just in the day to day, in your cave, while you're still holding a promise.
So good. I've been thinking a lot about Christmas this year, and one word that kept coming to me was the humility that God showed. And I kind of find that a funny word, but I'm going to read a quote that Pastor Sally Lloyd-Jones once said, and she said, "The God who flung planets into space and kept them from whirling around and around, the God who made the universe with just a single word, the one who could do anything at all, made himself small and came down as a baby." That's humility, isn't it?
It's huge, isn't it?
Came to earth as a human, was born into a cave, you know, and that is the ultimate humility. I mean, he could have demanded the greatest maternity ward ever, right?
Totally.
You know, in the greatest palace ever. Yet that's the God. That is God, isn't it?
It is. I saw a quote this week and it said, humility is not about thinking about less of yourself. It's about thinking about yourself less.
Yeah, it's great.
And I love that
Yeah,
quote because that's what God did.
Yeah.
That's what God did. He came for us. You know, that entry into the world at that lowest level
that's right.
was totally for us. It was totally for us.
And even because when Jesus spoke, he said, you know, the good news is going to come for the poor. The good news is going to be for the poor. And back then, the poor didn't mean the people without money. It meant the people of low social status. It meant the immigrants. It meant, you know, the criminals, the disabled. So he's saying, okay, the good news is for the people who are already low. Like that's the backwards kingdom. So we've got this idea that if we exalt ourselves or the people who are exalted, that's who the good news is for. It's the complete opposite. You know?
Let me touch on that a little bit, Kyle, because that's great. And you know, you've worked in areas helping out the less fortunate for a period of your life here. Christmas time, you know, do we become a little bit blasé about this? And, you know, we sort of, you know, we give a little bit extra under the gifting tree, or we give a hamper to someone and we kind of make ourselves feel good? You know, can we fall into that trap of, you know, the Christmas tree is at church and there's a giving box and I put $50 in there because I actually feel better about myself by doing that? Do we run a risk with that at Christmas time?
I think that what we run a risk of is kind of isolating with our family. We see family as the meaning for Christmas, so we with our family, which is great. That's an absolutely great value to have. We put all our focus on our family, but what we forget is that for my work in a drug and alcohol rehab, we were told that Christmas is the worst time of year.
Sure.
Because they're so triggered because these people don't have family.
Yeah.
And they're even more isolated because the people who potentially would be looking out for them are now angled away from them.
Yeah.
So in terms of, people give a lot during Christmas, which is great, they feel generous, but in terms of their time and their heart and their affection, it's not going out to everyone else, it's going to their family, which again is a great value, but it just puts those people again on the outer.
Is it both, Alicia? Because family's important too, isn't it?
It is important. I think that's why I love Christmas, because it brings up some of these questions that we have to have. And the church, Jesus came and he called the church his bride, which was supposed to be the full spectrum of humanity in his church.
Awesome.
And it's actually the place where we get connected and we can find reason to call others family and to include people and find ways to share more broadly than who we are.
That's
and
good.
and I still carry that for the church. I love our church because we have incredible diversity.
Yeah.
We have, people from so many different countries around the world, so many different social levels.
Yeah.
But we need to find a way to stay connected.
Absolutely.
We absolutely need to find a way in our
Connection.
communities to stay connected and
Yeah.
not isolate ourselves either in our lovely castle houses for people who are really well off or people who are isolated
So
and
good.
choosing to be lonely.
Yeah, for sure.
As we come to a bit of a close, it's been great catching up with the gang again
Come on.
for this. And but as we come to a bit of a close with this, how do we, as individuals and as a church, help a post-Christian world understand that Jesus is still the reason for the season? We know there's trees and we know there's commercialism. I mean, that's been going on for a long time. And, in particular, we just ran 3 awesome Christmas shows, and, we saw nearly 1,000 people coming through our doors. Many of them were community, and it's a great evangelical tool that we use. But how do we help a post-Christian world understand that Jesus is the reason for the season? Kyle?
I mean, God always meets people where they're at. That's his whole heart. And that's why I have no issue with a nativity scene looking like a fairy tale. Because God uses stories and he meets people where they're at. And I think that sometimes we get a bit hung up on how we can strategize our Christmas marketing in order to better, market it. But I mean, the demons I know have plenty of style. Jesus can satisfy every point that we have, and so he's the one who changes, he sees the changing seasons. So I think for us to better use Christmas in order to reach the people who need to know what Christmas is about, we just need to fully rely on him more and say, hey, look, we did this last year, I spoke to this neighbour last year about this topic, but God, I need to rely on you because you're the one, steering the ship here.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, and look, I think Christmas brings up a lot of emotions for a lot of people. And regardless of the commerciality of Christmas, authenticity never fails. Yeah. And so a lot of people find, nothing after the Christmas wrapping's ripped off and everything's eaten and everything's gone and we've all drunk too much wine. You've still got a hole. Yeah. You've still got a hole in a place that only God can fill.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, for me, Christmas just brings that up, and it's just another chance to notice the hole and to ask people how they are, to ask them what their hope is for the future. And after 2020, I just think, we walk in hope. Yeah. And it's such an unusual voice. Yeah. It's such a powerful voice at the moment. And so I'm happy. I love Christmas. I love all the baubles and the Christmas tree and the carols. And
the lights.
I'm in.
100%.
But at the end of the day, when I'm having a cup of coffee, I notice the hole in people's heart. Yeah. And if you can pull that out and show them the genuine, authentic love of God, that will never fail.
That's good. That's really good.
I know for me that I love preaching on Christmas Day. I love doing that. And a lot of people will say, oh yeah, but only the EC Christians, the Easter Christmas Christians turn up. And I'm like, thank you, Jesus.
Absolutely.
It's the same as we do. As I said, we've just done 3 great Christmas shows where 1,000 people turned up, and a large percentage of them were community people. And if that's what's getting in the door and they're hearing the good news gospel that was preached to them, then I'm okay with that. And
Yep.
so my prayer is always that for those who turn up on Christmas Day or any of our services around Christmas time, that if they're only doing it because they think they have to or to keep family happy, that's okay. Come along, and they may link onto this online and see what we're doing, and they may find that peace, that missing hole
That's
inside
right.
them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, it's been great sharing this time with you. A very Merry Christmas to both you, and a very Merry Christmas to all of those who are watching. It's been an honour to be doing our online services with you this year, and we would just love to wish you from C3 Hobart a very Merry Christmas. God bless.
Oh, hang on. Wait. It's not over yet. It's not over. I bought gifts.
Oh, come on.
I bought gifts because you two, I mean, we've had a pretty cool year, and I really, really love the Christmas spirit.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
Merry Christmas, you two.
Have they-
Open it?
Open it now. Come
Have
on.
they been there that whole time?
I might have been hidden around. Come on. Yes.
Christmas socks.
Who doesn't want Christmas
Santa
socks?
loves me.
These are like
Yes,
gloves.
What do you
they're
got, gloves?
awesome.
I
No,
got
they're
gloves.
not
Look, I'm
gloves. They're
pulling
not
this
gloves. Come
Here you
on,
go,
and
here
you
you
have
go.
to wear them.
Okay, yeah.
Like, Christmas Day. Everyone loves Christmas socks. It's like
I'm gonna wear
Christmas
them as gloves.
jammies and stuff. Oh,
Look
I
at
didn't
that.
really want to see your hairy legs, but wow,
Come
right?
on.
Uh-huh. Everyone enjoy your Christmas socks.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas.
You idiots.